Why is it that the moment you stop desperately chasing love, it suddenly seems to find you? And why does this seemingly simple advice ruin more dating lives than it saves? I'm going to reveal the 3 psychological principles that make this phenomenon work. But here's the thing. Most people get completely wrong about it. They think it's about playing games or pretending not to care. That's not just ineffective, it's actually sabotaging your chances. The real reason this works is much deeper. And if you don't understand all 3 principles I'm about to share, you'll end up like most people who try this advice and wonder why they're still alone. You've probably experienced this paradox yourself. You spend months obsessing over someone who barely notices you exist. You craft the perfect texts, analyze every interaction, lose sleep wondering what they're thinking, and nothing. Radio silence, cold shoulders, polite rejections that sting worse than outright dismissal. Then something shifts. Maybe you get tired, maybe you get distracted, maybe you just reach that point where you can't carry the weight of caring so much anymore. You stop checking their social media, stop planning conversations 3 moves ahead, stop wondering if they'll text back, and that's when it happens. They reach out, they seem interested, they start chasing you. But here's the dangerous part that nobody talks about. Most people who experience this think they've cracked some secret code. They start deliberately trying to recreate that indifference, and that's where everything falls apart. Because there's a massive difference between genuine detachment and performed indifference. And if you can't tell the difference, you're about to make dating much harder for yourself. The first principle you need to understand is what I call the scarcity signal. When you're desperately seeking someone's attention, you're operating from a place of scarcity. But here's what's really happening that most people miss. Your desperation isn't just unattractive because it's needy. It's unattractive because it fundamentally changes how you show up in the interaction. Think about this from their perspective. Someone approaches you, and within their energy, you sense that your response will make or break their day, that your approval or rejection will determine how they feel about themselves. That's not just pressure, it's a massive red flag about their emotional stability. But there's something even deeper happening that explains why this backfires so consistently. When you care too much about the outcome, you stop being yourself. You become a performance, a carefully crafted version of who you think they want you to be. You edit your words, suppress your opinions, hide your quirks. You become so focused on getting the right reaction that you forget to actually connect. Now, this creates a vicious cycle that most people don't recognize until it's too late. The more you perform, the less authentic connection becomes possible. The less connection you feel, the more desperate you become. The more desperate you become, the harder you perform. And round it goes until you're completely disconnected from who you actually are. This is why desperate pursuit fails, but understanding why it fails is only the first piece of the puzzle. Because if you try to fix this by simply acting less interested, you're missing the second principle entirely. And that's where most people's attempts at this strategy completely fall apart. The second principle is what I call authentic abundance. This isn't about pretending you have options or acting like you don't care. Real abundance comes from having a full life, from knowing your worth, from understanding that while relationships can add richness to your life, they don't define your value or determine your happiness. But here's the part that trips everyone up. You can't fake this mindset. You can't just decide to feel abundant and expect it to work. True abundance has to be built, and if you don't know how to build it properly, you'll end up in what I call the fake abundance trap. The fake abundance trap is when you try to manufacture the feeling of not caring by playing games, delaying responses, or creating artificial scarcity. This is manipulation, and it usually backfires because it's not genuine indifference. People can sense the difference between someone who genuinely doesn't need their validation and someone who's pretending not to need it while secretly craving it. Real indifference has a completely different energy. When you genuinely don't need someone's approval to feel complete, you interact with them from a place of curiosity rather than desperation. You ask questions because you're interested in their answers, not because you're trying to keep the conversation going. You share your thoughts because that's who you are, not because you think it's what they want to hear. This authentic version of you is magnetic, but not for the reasons most people think. It's not because you're playing hard to get, it's because you're being real. Most people are walking around wearing masks, trying to be what they think others want them to be. When someone shows up as themselves, comfortable in their own skin, it's refreshing and attractive. But even understanding both of these principles isn't enough if you don't understand the third one. And this is where the real transformation happens. This is the principle that separates people who occasionally stumble into success from people who consistently attract healthy relationships. The third principle is what I call outcome independence, but this goes far beyond just not caring whether someone likes you back. True outcome independence means you're measuring your success by completely different metrics than most people use. Most people measure dating success by whether someone responds to their text, whether they get a second date, whether the person they're interested in becomes interested back. But when you're truly outcome independent, you measure success by whether you showed up authentically, whether you honored your values, whether you treated yourself and others with respect. This shift in how you measure success changes everything about how you approach dating. You're no longer trying to get a specific person to like you. You're trying to find someone who genuinely appreciates who you are. You're not asking, how can I make them want me? You're asking, is this person someone I actually want to be with? But here's where this gets really powerful. And this is the part that most people never figure out. When you combine all three principles, something interesting happens. You start attracting different types of people entirely. Instead of desperate people who are drawn to your need, you attract confident people who appreciate your strength. Instead of relationships built on validation seeking, you create connections based on mutual respect and genuine compatibility. Instead of having to constantly prove your worth, you find people who recognize your value immediately. The practical application of this starts with building a life you genuinely love, but not in the way most people think. It's not about staying busy to distract yourself from wanting love. It's about creating a foundation of happiness that doesn't depend on romantic success. Pursue interests that excite you. Develop friendships that fulfill you. Work on goals that matter to you. When your life is rich and meaningful on its own, potential partners become a wonderful addition rather than a necessary completion. Practice expressing yourself honestly in all your relationships, not just romantic ones. Get comfortable with the possibility that not everyone will appreciate your authentic self. This is actually good news because the people who don't appreciate the real you are not your people anyway. Set boundaries and stick to them. This isn't about playing games. It's about respecting yourself. If someone's behavior doesn't align with your values or standards, be willing to walk away. This isn't a manipulation tactic to make them chase you. It's a commitment to your own well-being. But remember, the goal isn't to make people want you. The goal is to live authentically and attract people who appreciate that authenticity. Some will, some won't. Both outcomes are perfectly fine when you're operating from a place of genuine self-worth. When you stop caring about specific outcomes, you start caring about the right things. You care about being honest. You care about treating people well. You care about honoring your own values and boundaries. These things create the conditions for genuine connection, which is infinitely more valuable than manufactured attraction. The results will come, but there'll be different results. This is how you stop caring and start winning, not by playing games or manipulating emotions, but by becoming so comfortable with yourself that external validation becomes unnecessary. In that space of authentic self-acceptance, real love finally has room to grow.